What if I told you that the most dangerous words in the English language aren't "I hate you" or "I want you dead," but "I love you"? On July 26, 1997, a brilliant computer engineer believed he was driving to his second chance at love. Instead, he was driving to his own execution, planned by the woman who had whispered those three deadly words into his ear for 2 years. This woman had forged his signature on million-dollar life insurance policies. She had turned his own cousins into assassins. She had calculated his death down to the penny he was worth. But here's the twist that will haunt you. Bruce Cleland never saw it coming. Not even when she asked him to check the tailgate. Not even when shadows moved in the darkness around their car. Not even when the first bullet tore through the night air. Because when you've never been loved before, you'll believe anything. Picture the cruelest joke the universe could play. Give someone a brain capable of solving the most complex mathematical equations, but leave them completely helpless when it comes to understanding the human heart. Meet Bruce Cleland, born March 31st, 1954, a boy who would grow up to write software that helped defend America, but who couldn't defend himself from one woman's deadly charm. High school in 1968. While other kids were discovering sex and rebellion, Bruce was discovering something far more dangerous, the crushing weight of being different. They called him Tiny Tim, not because he was small, but because his voice was high, his manner gentle, his very existence somehow offensive to teenage cruelty. But here's what makes this story so tragic. Bruce responded to bullying not with anger, but with laughter. At himself. He learned to be his own worst critic before anyone else could be. He programmed himself to expect rejection. Salvation came in the form of numbers, equations, and eventually, computers. While his classmates were fumbling through awkward dates, Bruce was mastering the language of machines. And machines, unlike people, were logical, predictable, safe. By 1976, he graduated from Harvey Mudd College, one of the most elite science schools in America. 2 years later, Stanford University handed him a master's degree in computer science, just as Silicon Valley was about to explode. Bruce joined the tech revolution at General Electric, then moved to TRW, where his security clearance gave him access to classified military projects. By the late 1980s, he was earning over $100,000 a year, a fortune in Reagan-era dollars. But here's the detail that should have been his first red flag. While his tech bro colleagues were buying Ferraris and flashy condos, Bruce drove modest cars and lived like a monk. He saved everything, invested wisely, built a portfolio worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Why does this matter? Because predators can smell money the way sharks smell blood in the water. And Bruce Cleland, with his bulging bank accounts and his desperate loneliness, was about to become the most attractive prey in Southern California. At 41 years old, he had everything, except the one thing his brilliant mind couldn't calculate: how to recognize when someone was lying about loving him. November 1995. The Santa Fe Springs Swap Meet, a sprawling maze of vendors selling everything from bootleg DVDs to homemade salsa. The air thick with the scent of churros and broken dreams. And there she was, surrounded by containers of exotic spices like some kind of domestic goddess, Rebecca Salcedo. 26 years old, with the kind of beauty that stops traffic and the kind of smile that empties wallets. But let me tell you who Rebecca Salcedo really was, because Bruce Cleland never would have approached her spice booth if he'd known the truth. Born into chaos, raised by a mentally unstable mother who would later commit suicide, abandoned by a father who simply vanished one day like smoke. By 16, she had already discovered her most lethal weapon, the ability to make men believe she needed rescuing. Her first marriage, at 16, wasn't about love. It was a business transaction. $2,000 to provide some stranger with a green card. For Rebecca, it was like discovering she had superpowers. She could turn tears into cash, vulnerability into profit. What Bruce never knew. In 1991, Rebecca had been arrested for drug dealing. While serving time in prison, she gave birth to a son, and she genuinely didn't know who the father was. Think about that. She had been with so many men that parentage was a mystery. After prison, she found what might have been real love with a former police officer named Sherry. Rebecca even tattooed Sherry's name on her leg. the only authentic emotion she may have ever felt. But then her mother's suicide shattered whatever humanity Rebecca had left. She became something else. Something calculating. So when this awkward, wealthy engineer approached her spice booth and nervously asked if she wanted a job in IT, Rebecca's predator brain immediately started calculating. She saw his expensive watch, his nervous stammering, the way he looked at her like she was some kind of miracle, and she knew she had found her retirement plan. Within a week, listen to this, within 1 week of meeting Bruce Cleland, Rebecca Salcedo suggested marriage. Most people would run screaming. But Bruce thought he'd won the lottery. What happened next was like watching a master class in psychological manipulation. If master classes were taught by psychopaths, Rebecca didn't just date Bruce Cleland. She studied him. She identified every weakness, every insecurity, every desperate need, and then she systematically exploited them all. First, she complained about her living situation. Bruce's solution? Rent her an apartment. Furnish it completely. When she mentioned transportation problems, he bought her a car. Not good enough. He bought her a better car. But these weren't gifts, they were investments. Rebecca was training Bruce to associate her happiness with his spending. Every dollar was a dopamine hit, proof that he was worthy of love. Then came the manipulation masterpiece. Rebecca insisted on waiting until marriage for physical intimacy. To Bruce, this proved she was morally superior to other women. In reality, she was creating artificial scarcity, making herself seem more valuable by withholding what he wanted most. She claimed she'd only been with one man in her entire life, the father of her child. This was a complete lie, but it made Bruce feel chosen, special, honored to be her second love. When engagement time came, Rebecca selected a $10,000 diamond ring. For a man who clipped coupons and comparison shopped for everything, this was a massive expenditure. But love, Bruce convinced himself, was priceless. Then came the house, a 4-bedroom, $350,000 mansion near Los Angeles. Rebecca didn't just want a home, she wanted a statement. And Bruce, eager to prove his devotion, bought it without question. But here's the detail that should have terrified him. Rebecca insisted they live separately until their real church wedding. She moved into the house with her son. Bruce stayed with his parents. Why? Because Rebecca needed privacy for what came next. The house became party central. Men came and went at all hours. When Bruce questioned it, Rebecca had perfect explanations. They were cousins, childhood friends, neighbors who needed help. Bruce's brilliant analytical mind, the same mind that could debug complex software, somehow couldn't debug his own relationship. January 1997. The church wedding Rebecca had demanded finally arrived. Hundreds of guests, thousands of dollars in flowers, a reception. That would have made a Hollywood producer jealous. To everyone watching, Bruce and Rebecca Cleland looked like the perfect couple. Him in his tuxedo, nervous but radiant with happiness. Her in white silk, beautiful and serene. But at Rebecca's bachelorette party 3 nights earlier, she had revealed the truth to her friends. I don't love him at all. I'm only in this for the money. The honeymoon in Hawaii should have been romantic bliss. Instead, it became Bruce's introduction to psychological torture. Rebecca called friends back home to mock her new husband, describing their intimate moments in humiliating detail. Being with him, she told her friends, is the most disgusting experience of my life. Imagine that. Your wife of 3 days is on the phone in the next room, laughing about how repulsive you are. Back in California, the marriage imploded within weeks. Rebecca resumed partying, spending Bruce's money like water, and entertaining male visitors. Bruce began working late, avoiding his own home, sleeping at his parents' house. By April 1997, just 4 months after their fairy tale wedding, Rebecca was openly discussing divorce. She had calculated exactly how much money she expected, half of everything Bruce owned. But then Rebecca discovered the crushing truth about California divorce law. Assets acquired before marriage remained separate property. Bruce's house, his investments, his retirement accounts. Legally, she had no claim on any of it. Her settlement? $5,000. After months of manipulation, after enduring what she considered the humiliation of being married to Bruce, she would walk away with barely enough to buy a used car. For most people, this would be the end of the story. A failed marriage, lessons learned, moving on. But Rebecca Salcedo wasn't most people. She was a predator who had invested too much time and effort to accept such a pathetic return on investment. If she couldn't profit from Bruce Cleland's love, she would profit from his death. June 1997. While Bruce was consulting with divorce lawyers and trying to rebuild his shattered life, Rebecca was implementing a plan so audacious, so cold-blooded, that it would have impressed the devil himself. Life insurance policies. Multiple policies. On her soon-to-be ex-husband's life, totaling over $1 million. But there was one problem. She needed Bruce's signature on the applications. So Rebecca Salcedo did what any loving wife would do. She forged it. Multiple times. On multiple policies. Think about the calculation here. Rebecca had transformed herself from a woman who would receive $5,000 in divorce proceedings into a widow who would inherit over $1 million, plus the house, plus his retirement accounts, plus his stock portfolio. But she needed Bruce to die, and it had to look accidental. July 25, 1997. The call that would end Bruce Cleland's life. Rebecca's voice was soft, vulnerable, filled with exactly the kind of hope Bruce had been praying to hear. Maybe they could start over, she suggested. Maybe their marriage was worth saving. For Bruce, who had never stopped loving the woman he thought Rebecca was, it was like receiving a message from heaven. He agreed to meet her for dinner, at the same restaurant where they'd had their first date. The romantic symbolism must have seemed like destiny. At 9:30 p.m., Bruce picked up his wife, his heart full of hope for reconciliation. By 10:30 p.m., they were driving to what Rebecca claimed was a family gathering at her uncle's house. A chance for Bruce to reconnect with her relatives, to show that he was still welcome in her world. They spent hours with her uncle, talking and laughing like the happy couple from their wedding photos. Around 1 a.m., they said their goodbyes and left together in Bruce's Toyota 4Runner. Rebecca was driving when she pulled onto a dark, isolated stretch of road in East Los Angeles. She told Bruce she needed to check something with the tailgate. He sat unsuspecting in the passenger seat, probably thinking about their future together. Shadows moved in the darkness around them. Bruce Cleland had 30 seconds left to live. The attack was swift, brutal, and professionally executed. The first shot struck Bruce while he was still sitting in the passenger seat, probably turned toward Rebecca, maybe even smiling at her. But Bruce Cleland didn't die easily. Wounded but not dead. His brilliant mind probably trying to process what was happening, trying to understand why anyone would want to hurt him, Bruce scrambled out of the car and ran. Picture this man, a gentle software engineer who had never hurt anyone, who had spent his life making the world more secure through technology, running for his life through the darkness while bullets flew around him. Another shot struck him in the back. He collapsed, and his killer moved in close to finish the job with shots to his head. The man who had once been called Tiny Tim, who had spent decades overcoming cruelty through kindness, died alone on a street corner, murdered by the woman he loved. From a nearby house, a witness glimpsed the horror and called 911. Police arrived to find Bruce Cleland's body lying just feet from his vehicle. His life ended at 43 years old. They also found Rebecca, sitting calmly near the hood of the car, her performance already in full swing. Her story was ready. She had been knocked unconscious by an attacker. When she came to, she discovered Bruce was dead. It must have been a carjacking. The attackers had even stolen her diamond ring. But something was wrong from the very beginning. Rebecca's demeanor didn't match her story. She wasn't hysterical with grief. She wasn't shaking with trauma. She wasn't even sad. Instead, she was oddly composed, almost businesslike, as if she was reporting a fender bender rather than her husband's murder. The detectives began noticing problems immediately. If this was a carjacking, why was Bruce's wallet, containing cash and credit cards, still in his pocket? Why were Rebecca's purse and cell phone untouched in the car? What kind of robber steals only a ring? Medical examination revealed no signs of head trauma on Rebecca, despite her claims of being knocked unconscious. When she spoke to investigators, her focus seemed strangely self-centered. She talked about her outfit, her memories of their first date, their dinner conversation, details that had nothing to do with solving her husband's murder. It was as if she was reading from a script she had practiced. Because she was. What Rebecca hadn't counted on was that murdering your husband for money is the oldest motive in the book, and detectives know exactly where to look. They started with the marriage itself, and what they discovered was shocking. Friends described a relationship built on financial exploitation. Rebecca's extravagant spending, her open affairs, her complete disdain for the man who had given her everything. Then came the discovery that changed everything: those life insurance policies. Over $1 million in coverage, taken out just weeks before Bruce's death, with forged signatures on every application. The timing was damning. Rebecca had literally calculated Bruce's death down to the dollar amount she would receive. But the smoking gun was the phone records. In the weeks leading up to the murder, Rebecca had been in constant contact with two men, Alvaro and Jose Quezada, her cousins with criminal backgrounds. When detectives brought in the Quezada brothers, their resolve crumbled like a house of cards. Under interrogation, both men confessed to their roles in the murder, and both pointed directly to Rebecca as the mastermind. Jose Quezada admitted to being the shooter. Alvaro confessed to being the getaway driver. Their testimony painted Rebecca not as a grieving widow, but as a cold-blooded architect of murder who had promised them money from the insurance payout in exchange for killing her husband. The case that had initially appeared to be a random carjacking was revealed to be something far more sinister. A carefully planned execution, motivated by pure greed and carried out with ruthless precision. But here's the detail that will haunt you. According to the brothers' testimony, Rebecca had been planning Bruce's murder for months. While he was hoping for reconciliation, while he was believing her lies about starting over, she was already selecting his killers. Every "I love you" was a countdown to his death. The trial of Rebecca Cleland began in 1999, and it was a media sensation. Here was a woman who looked like a telenovela star, accused of orchestrating her husband's murder for insurance money. Court TV couldn't have scripted it better. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. They presented the forged insurance policies, the phone records, the testimony of the killers themselves, and a parade of witnesses who described Rebecca's financial manipulation and complete lack of genuine affection for her victim. Rebecca's defense team tried every angle. She was a victim of domestic abuse, they claimed, though no evidence supported this. She was traumatized by her husband's death, though her behavior suggested otherwise. The Real killers were lying to save themselves, though their stories matched perfectly with the physical evidence. But the most damaging testimony came from Rebecca's own friends, who described her bachelorette party confession: "I don't love him at all. I'm only in this for the money." June 2000. After deliberating for hours, the jury returned with their verdict: guilty on all counts. First-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, special circumstances for financial gain, and lying in wait. The judge's sentence was swift and final: life in prison without the possibility of parole. The Quezada brothers received identical sentences. All three would spend the rest of their lives behind bars. But here's what makes this story even more chilling. Rebecca showed no remorse. Not during the trial. Not at sentencing. Not ever. When asked if she had anything to say to Bruce's family, she remained silent. When given the opportunity to express regret for her actions, she said nothing. Because to Rebecca Salcedo, Bruce Cleland had never been a person. He was a business opportunity that hadn't worked out as planned. Today, Rebecca Cleland sits in a cell at the California Institution for Women in Corona, where she will remain until she dies. She is now in her 50s, her beauty faded, her schemes ended, her life reduced to a 6x8 concrete box. The $1 million she killed for? She never saw a penny of it. The house Bruce bought for their future? Sold to pay legal fees. The comfortable life she manipulated him into providing? Gone forever. But Bruce Cleland's legacy lives on in ways Rebecca could never destroy. His work in software engineering contributed to technological advances that continue to benefit society. His careful investments, returned to his family, helped fund scholarships for other young engineers. His parents, Harold and Eleanor, used their son's memory to warn others about predatory relationships. They established a foundation that helps people recognize the signs of financial abuse in romantic relationships. The tragedy of Bruce Cleland isn't just that he died. It's that he died believing he had finally found love when he had actually found its opposite. A calculating predator who saw his gentle heart as nothing more than a pathway to profit. But there's something else that haunts this story. Something that makes it more than just another tale of greed and murder. Bruce Cleland spent his entire adult life building wealth, not for luxury or status, but because he believed that money could buy him the one thing his brilliant mind couldn't calculate: love. He was wrong about that. but he wasn't wrong about deserving it. Every time you get a call from someone claiming to love you, remember Bruce Cleland. Remember that the most dangerous predators don't break into your house. They move into your heart. Remember that "I love you" can be the most expensive words you'll ever hear. And remember that Bruce Cleland was a good man who deserved better than Rebecca Salcedo. He deserved the love he was so desperately trying to give. Instead, he got a bullet to the head on a dark street corner, murdered by the woman who had promised to love him until death do them part. She kept that promise, just not the way he expected. Before you go, ask yourself this question. Do you know someone like Bruce Cleland? Someone brilliant in their profession but naive in love? Someone with money but no experience with relationships? Someone who might be vulnerable to a predator like Rebecca Salcedo? The warning signs are always there. The rushed timeline, the immediate talk of marriage, the constant financial needs, the isolation from family and friends, the stories that don't quite add up. Bruce Cleland's murder was preventable. His death was the result of a calculated plan, but his vulnerability was something that could have been recognized and addressed. Don't let someone you care about become the next victim of a beautiful predator with an ugly heart. Because in the end, Bruce Cleland's story isn't really about murder or money or insurance fraud. It's about the price of loneliness in a world full of people who will exploit it. Remember his name, remember his story, and remember that love should never cost you everything.